Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Porky's Badtime story, released in 1937 with two colorized versions later on, one the Korean redrawn version and a computer colorized version. It's the 171st in the series and it's directed by Bob Clampett. You can currently find this short on the Porky Pig 101 DVD set, and it's also in HD on HBO Max. Now, in case you haven't seen this one, although you've probably seen this before in a different way via different studios, because this story's been done to death, but you've got Porky and Gabby, and they're late to work one day, and they're basically threatened by their boss that they'll be fired if they don't come back to work on time. So they try and have a good night's sleep to wake up at the right time, but many distractions happen over the course of the night. So nothing really spectacular there. It's a story that's been done many a time, and yeah, this was also remade as TikTok Tuckered later on. So in the early days of my channel, I did all the cartoons as audio commentaries. They were initially approved, but later on a separate legal team forced me to take them down. So what you're about to see is a remix of the original audio commentary I did. My voice is a little raw in that, so apologies, but I think it does get the point across about this cartoon. I'll add a few extra thoughts, and I'll include the section from the Bob Clampett retrospective about this cartoon featuring my good friend Manny. So grab some popcorn and enjoy. The original title for this cartoon was It Happened All Night, but due to the Hays Code, the censorship at the time, it just sounded too risque, so they changed it to Porky's Badtime story. You may be feeling a bit of deja vu because this cartoon was essentially remade into TikTok Tuckered by Bob Clampett a few years later, I believe 1944. So basically, if you've been following the commentaries, I went through how in Porky and Gabby and Porky Super Service, they were done at Up Iwerks Studio. They of course were credited by, the direction rather, was credited to Up Iwerks, and the co-directors were Bob Clampett and Chuck Jones. So this cartoon started off the same way, with Up Iwerks doing the layout, but he had left the studio and went back to work for Disney. So essentially, Bob Clampett was sitting in Up's seat one day, and it's like, well, I guess you're the boss now. So, yeah, so he basically continued making this particular cartoon. This cartoon, along with Get Rich Quick Porky, was produced at the Iwerks studio, and that's why if you look at the shots with Porky having the triangles in his eyes, like I pointed out in Porky's Super Service, they would have been done by Iwerks animators. And Bob himself animates a few scenes, like when Porky is throwing objects at the cat outside, and also when the boss pretty much tells them off with some soundtracks. So let's have a look. The music involved, we've got When My Dreamboat Comes Home, Pudd'nhead Jones, How Could You, and as we're going to hear right now, By the Light of the Silvery Moon, and September in the Rain, when, of course, the room all drips with water. Here is like a real mishmash of Bob Clampett with the Iwerks directors, so animators rather, not directors, and whereas TikTok Tuckered was Bob Clampett pretty much at his prime, and I just felt the animation was a lot better in that one, and the timing was a bit better. But they're both great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this one. It's still quite a fun cartoon. If you showed me this one and not the other one, I would still enjoy it. But this one's like a little fun one, where there's always that shtick in a lot of cartoons where, you know, a character, or in this case characters, are trying to sleep and they're woken up by all sorts of things during the night. But Manny, you've been kind of quiet. What are your thoughts on Porky's Badtime story?
Gabby. There's my Simpsons reference for the day. So like many of these cartoons that are on this list, I might as well say it now before I repeat it a million times. I have such a love and charm for the black and white Porky shorts of the 30s and 40s. Mainly, most of them done by Clampett himself, because I was a little kid in the 90s watching Looney Tunes on Nickelodeon. And for some reason, those computer colorized and occasionally redrawn Porky shorts from back then. And, also some of the shorts that Tashlin did and Norm McCabe did. Just, I don't know, I always found them really charming. And this one is an example of that. I mean, what I like about Porky's Badtime story, and I don't know, there's days where I say TikTok Tuckered is better than this one. I mean, it's kind of cool that the same director took another spin doing the same concept. Not that anybody else would reuse the same jokes or same plots over and over again. I won't name any names for its reeling, but there's just something about these early Clampett shorts that even though they're nowhere near as artistic and funny as the stuff he did when he took over Avery's unit, but there's a whole lot of charm to it. Not every joke's gonna land, not every plot is gonna make any sense, but there's just so much charm to it, and you could tell, especially early on, that Clampett had all this energy. Well, him and Jones, because you don't want to bypass the impact that Jones had on the early shorts that they co-directed, but there's so much youthful energy in this stuff, and every time I see this cartoon, I always find it to be funny. Even though the whole frustration gag or trying to sleep thing sometimes gets a little played out, but it works for me. I don't hate Gabby nearly as much as everybody else. And something I think that Fox mentioned about Porky and Gabby, that there's something about these early Clampett shorts with Porky, and just in general, Stalin's scores just hit so well in these cartoons. In particular, this one, I always think of the part, Porky falls asleep and the water starts dripping on the bed and you start hearing September in the Rain. And I love the work. I mean, now as an adult, I start laughing out loud at the implication of the joke, but it's just what Stalling was doing in those cartoons really added a nice little flavor to it. And I would say Avery's debut in Gold Diggers of 49, Freelings with, I think, Buddy the Gob, all the other directors, I would say this is arguably one of the best, if not the best, debut short that any of the Warner directors had at the time.
I agree. So in revisiting this short for the commentary redo into a review, of course, I've got a few more observations. First of all, I love the fact that this is such a perfect representation of what was happening around this time at the studio, where you've got Clampett, of course he's more wilder, and you've got Chuck Jones, who is a little bit more, I guess, character animation oriented, and the two seem to balance each other out pretty nicely in these earlier shorts, and that's what makes them so charming. Once Jones takes over Tashlin's unit later on, then Clampett is basically unleashed and does his own thing, and of course Chuck does his own thing, but in these earlier shorts, it's interesting to see how the two different, I guess, points of view on how an anime short should be comes about. But with the Clampett in the 40s, he's known for a lot of very risque jokes, some of which I'm actually very surprised actually got past the Hays Code, but of course it did, and we're all thankful for it. But even in these early cartoons, sometimes they'll slip some very cheeky jokes, and of course the big one is the quote-unquote bedwetting joke, where Gabby Goat gets up and he looks over at Porky and thinks he's wet the bed. It's subtle enough, I think, to slip by the Hays Code at that point. But yeah, it's interesting revisiting this one. I mean, but it's like what Manny said. I don't know if I prefer this one over TikTok Tuckered. I think they both have their strengths and their weaknesses, but I love them both as far as I'm concerned. And, this one I'm going to rate, 8 out of 10. It's only slightly lower because I've seen this trope done so many times, with the character trying to get to sleep and all that. But I really enjoyed this one.
Hey, right now! How do you expect a guy to sleep with all that noise?
Now, Manny Cruz, whom you just heard, he rates this short 7 out of 10 as well. But before I leave this review, just two things. 1. Peter Piper Pickled Peppers is based off the tongue twister, Peter Piper picked a pair of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a pair of pickled peppers. So there you go. You try and say that. And lastly, what is this thing? I have no idea. But that'll end this review. So, as always, guys, thanks for watching. And until next time, take care.